Welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages, with your host, Matthew Shipp. This is the podcast for all of those who are involved in the agriculture all the way to the distribution of beverages. And now your host, Matthew Shipp.
Hello and welcome to Harvest to Pour. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I am here with Cydian Kauffman from Pure Water Northwest. So Pure Water Northwest is a full-service water treatment company. And Cydian, welcome to the show, and I'm sure you'll tell us a lot more about your company and the importance of having pure quality water for beverages.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. So let us know a little bit about yourself, how you got into creating this water treatment business for yourself.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I got into it because I was a property manager.
Yeah.
And I know that's a weird way to get into it, but we had a lot of tenants who would constantly complain about water. And when we went to try and see what was wrong, like if it smelled bad or was discolored, we would take it to a lab to get it tested. And the lab would say, you're within the legal level. And then we would go to the owner and they'd say, well, if I'm within the legal level, I don't have to do anything, right? And it would be this struggle between the tenant and the owner, and I would be in the middle of that. So actually, Pure Water Northwest predates me as part of the company. I'm one of the owners now, but I bought into the company in order to actually get into water treatment because it interested me so much what I learned when I reached out to them, which was that the EPA has two different standards for water.
Oh.
They have what's called the MCL and they have what's called the MCLG. And if you want me to just translate those words, MCL basically is the legal level, meaning you're allowed to go up to the MCL and are not legally allowed to go over it. But the MCLG, which is more restrictive, is the health level. The MCLG stands for maximum contaminant level goal. And so, like arsenic, for example, any amount of it is considered unhealthy according to the MCLG.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, low levels of arsenic are probably inescapable, but it is still zero as the health guideline. But the legal level is 10 parts per billion, or I believe I'm saying that right. There's an amount that's allowed legally. So when these folks were having like rotten egg smells in their water or hydrogen sulfide or any of that stuff that was leading to these problems, we couldn't say we have to do this. I then had to, tap into my mediation background in order to try and find a happy medium between them. And it just made me super interested in water. I just became kind of addicted. And then my daughter started having skin problems, eczema issues on her skin. And we found out that softening the water got rid of that. And that pretty much clinched it for me.
Okay.
I've been in water treatment ever since.
So let me know, the MCL is basically what you're getting is your tap water. It's what comes from the city or your well water or whichever.
Yep. Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And the MCLG, is that reserved for, or is that just what you can get the quality to?
That is what the goal is supposed to be. It's the health guidelines. The MCLG is something the EPA set so people can say, we even meet the MCLG standard. We even meet the health guidelines, which is just it is unfortunate. It is the way it probably has to be with the way our water science is right now. But it's just something people should know about. They should know that there are two guidelines and that the water they drink does not necessarily meet the health guideline. And if they want it to meet the health guideline, they will have to do something additional at their home.
Okay. Well, I think that would be equally important at your home as it would be in a business, specifically a business that would create beverages, for instance.
Correct.
And all right, so I was thinking about like what part of the harvest to pour journey when I talk about beverages is how they source their goods, make what they make, and market what they market. Are you? But it's pretty obvious you're right there at the beginning before they even add ingredient one.
Yeah.
So you want that quality, highest quality of water you can get. Now, we were talking earlier, and those qualities of water that certain beverages want sometimes actually vary a little bit, or what they want to take out and what they actually want to put back in.
Yeah.
So take us through, I think you've mentioned you have a couple clients that are brewers.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So it's interesting because we've had coffee clients, we've had brewer clients, and they're different. So I don't know the science of brewing, right? Off the top of my head, I know the science of water. But all they had to do was give me a profile of what they wanted in their water. And it was interesting because there was a client out in Oak Harbor that is a brewer, and they have hard water, but it was extremely hard, and they had a lot of manganese. Now, manganese and hardness will sometimes go together, and iron as well. It was discolored, right? The problem is, in order to reduce the hardness, the manganese and the iron level, we had to reduce the hardness level. The hardness is basically calcium and magnesium. But if you have no calcium, when you're doing, I think, like an IPA, if you have no calcium at all, then you have no acidity. You cannot bind to the phosphate. I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
You can't bind to the phosphate compound in the grain, which then releases the hydrogen ions into the mash, which lowers the pH to make it acidic. To the acidity level, you need to pull out the flavor from the barley, basically. So it is required to have some of that calcium and hardness in the water, but in the process of removing the discoloration from the water, the iron and the manganese, we also lowered the hardness. So we really had to do something different for them than we would do for others, which is adjust the hardness back up a tiny bit and then do basically a tank that had calcium in it that he could put the water into so that the calcium would reabsorb into the water, and then he could make use of it for his brewing.
That is incredible. That's great. So I was always wondering. So that's you need something in the water for your flavors and stuff to bind to.
Yeah.
And keep that. That's very on point. And so I guess it also matters from where you get your water from, just the source and what's in it,
right,
as well.
Yeah. Well, that's super important for people to know that without testing, you don't really know what's in your water. And a lot of people do the smell test and the taste test, and that's good. And honestly, if you have a good result, great. But you also don't know if you're getting people arsenic beer or radium coffee or, thallium wine. You don't know unless you actually test the original water that you're making use of. I think beer is like 90% water, and like most wines are like 5% or something. So it's a very different, I can't remember. It's all off the top of my head. I can't remember the actual data, but it's something like that. And so it really matters a lot how much water you are using in your final product, and then what that water quality is. It's like the only way you can have control over what your final product is first by testing. And when I say testing, I mean a very elaborate test, not the usual tests you do at the lab, which is 4 or 5 contaminants, but we're talking about like 50 to 100 different contaminants, a full spectrum test. You do that, and then you talk to someone like myself or someone in our industry. We can then dial in your water to exactly what you need it to be for ideal brewing or coffee or whatever.
Interesting. Okay. So I know. So you're basically purifying and then at that point you're working with a blank slate that you can put something back in, kind of making your own water recipe that best suits. Because I know each coffee shop, each brewery probably plays with their water differently based on their creation process. Yeah, definitely is an important thing to see.
It's also interesting because using municipal water, you have chlorine, right? And chlorine and chloramines, which are the byproduct or an alternate form of chlorine, basically, can do weird things to coffee and to brewing. And so it also, any city system is going to be pre-treated in one way, but part of the treatment process is chlorine. So it will chlorine will definitely change your flavor profile. It'll dilute the oils. It'll do all kinds of things to the water that it is not always required to get it to a fully blank slate. Sometimes people find it to be enough just to target specific things that are in the water and remove those. So,
All right.
yeah, it all depends on the person and what they need.
And now a word from our sponsors. If you're a business owner trying to grow but feel stuck, it might be time to call the right kind of help. Dr. Mike Smith from Action Coach isn't just another consultant. He's a certified business and executive coach with the tools to help you grow smarter, not harder. Whether you need better systems, clearer strategy, or just want to get your time back, Action Coach can help you build a business that works without burning you out. You can learn more and even book a free session at actioncoach.com/St. Louis West. Don't guess your way through growth. Let Dr. Mike Smith with Action Coach show you the smarter path. Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our Profit Priority Workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs. Okay, I'm gonna pull from my science background a little bit.
Okay.
Do you ever notice that if somebody is mixing something back into their water and changing the pH, so they actually get a precipitate back out? And when I talk about a precipitate, it's something that's already in solution, but you change the pH where it actually falls. A solid will fall back out of the solution.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we do have to account for that whenever we're doing our assessment on what someone's end goal is.
Okay.
We absolutely have to identify. Then that's part of the reason for that full spectrum test I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Things like iron will turn from ferrous to ferric. If you oxidize it, things like if the pH drops, can suddenly bind and become kind of cover the sidewall of something. There's all kinds of, like you're saying, effects of either oxidizing or dropping the pH, increasing the hydrogen ions. All of that can have foreseen effects unless you're prepared for it, for sure.
All right. So definitely identifying the goal and use of your water is going to affect how a company like yours would approach the water purification.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Because I know that I've worked at lab. You can polish a water down to where it has no current. And usually you don't want that for drinking water because it does just the opposite. It actually pulls salts out of your system. So what level do you typically take, maybe just talking about a household or just drinking water, what level are you taking it to, like a parts per million of what's allowed to be in it to be, still safe for drinking?
Yeah, well, drinking, this is easy, actually. It's super easy. There's not a lot of ways you can go wrong because the technology is not to a point where we get the water where it's dangerous.
Okay.
In order to get the water to that dangerous level requires like a lab environment with $500,000 of equipment in it. And the
There's
reason
some UV
for
light
that
involved,
yeah, it has to be constantly circulating in a closed environment. The instant it's exposed to the air, it's immediately sucking in stuff from the air that is changing it from that current-free I think it's called 18 milliohm water that basically can be harmful for people to drink.
Yeah.
And the water we get from the house, when we make water the best it can be, we've put in $35,000 systems, which is way beyond what we would normally do for a house. But we put in gigantic massive water systems, $35,000, that gets the water so pure you probably could wash your computer circuitry with it.
That's
You
impressive.
probably could, but that's still not pure enough that it's going to hurt you.
Okay.
It's way overkill. We definitely told those people, this is overkill. Are you sure you want this? For most people, simple whole house system and then an under counter reverse osmosis gets you better water quality than you would get from a bottle in a store.
Okay.
Like that alone gets you better water quality than you'd get from even those fancy glass water bottles in the store. So.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Yeah, and when I was talking about the reason why you need water that pure is when you're working with something like DNA and you need no contaminants and you need a perfect control, that's the only time something like that comes into play.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So now, what do you see a lot in your industry or for clients coming to you? What's the kind of is it beyond just like, okay, it tastes bad and it smells funny? What other reasons do they come to you for?
Oh, we've run into some crazy stuff. Aside from the, coffee brewers who want their water to have an exact TDS and total dissolved solids, exact hydrogen, calcium, calcium, magnesium makeup. That's fun to dial that in. We've run into a lot of, because now in Washington State, marijuana growing is legal, state level at least. And so we have a lot of people coming to us trying to make sure the water is dialed in for plant growth. We've done agricultural water.
I wasn't going to go there, but I was wondering if you did that. Okay.
Yeah, we have. Farming water, we ran into a crazy situation once where a customer had moved their cattle onto their land and they went on vacation at brand new property for them. They had never drunk the water themselves. And the cows, they came back and 50 of their cattle had died.
Oh, my.
And we went in, determined that it was a naturally occurring cyanide spring, which I will be honest, I didn't know was possible.
Yeah.
But we were told by an engineer that it'd be easier to get water from the moon than to treat the water, but we still treated it. We were like, I accept your challenge. And that was actually our founder, Chris Pelton, who figured that out. He's kind of a nationwide water expert, so he knows way more than I know about water.
That's really cool. So you actually got into the agricultural, because I wasn't going to go there, but from talking the Harvest of Pour journey, for whatever you're growing, whether it's your hops or your coffee beans, that water is crucial. And, most people are sourcing it depending on what country they're from, either from just an aquifer or digging their own. And you're getting, obviously the soil plays a big part in this, but have you seen anything? I'm assuming when you were saying with marijuana and hemp, you're probably talking more along the lines of hydroponics for that water purity. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you done anything for larger crop growth?
Yeah. But they're pulling off of like massive wells. If they're lucky, they're not paying for city water. Yeah. They're digging deep wells that have a lot of water access so they can just spray their fields like crazy. But well water can have anything in it, right? And so it just goes back to that same thing, testing, right? Like sodium, chlorides, boron, fluorides, aluminum, ammonium, zinc, all that stuff is no problem really for people. I mean, in higher amounts for some of them maybe, but no problem for people at all. And pH, humans have a huge tolerance for pH. Plants, though, all those things are going to be important for plants. So if you do testing first and you notice your zinc is off the charts, and you have really sensitive plants, we're like, yay, zinc, bring it on. And plants are like, certain plants are like, no, please get the zinc off me. So we gotta test, know what we're doing, know what our purpose is, and then treat based on that.
Right. That's great. Definitely the pH is a big one. When I was working in greenhouses, that was definitely something to pay close attention to. All right. So now you're covering from the true harvest to the true pour and creation of each one. These systems you were talking about that are very specific to a brewery or a coffee shop, how is, again, their margins are very slim for most of these type of companies. How is the maintenance for these type of setups?
So it does depend on what the original water quality is and therefore what we had to do. With the brewer, for example, that was in Oak Harbor, they put a bag of salt into a tank because they had to have the iron and manganese removed, which required, in their case, a softener. Now, usually we can remove iron and manganese without softening. Usually we can oxidize the iron and manganese in order to make it be removable by carbon. But their manganese was so high that we had to actually do a second type of media in addition to that to soften the water. And then we had to remineralize. But a lot of times we can get people to have good brewing water with basically no maintenance because the system will self-clean and flush everything down the drain. And you don't usually require salt because we're usually not trying to soften greatly for brewing purposes. So yeah, with those situations, they have basically no maintenance. They're replacing media maybe every 10 to 15 years, but probably 10 years in a brewing application.
Now, are some of these systems to purify the water like reverse osmosis type of purification systems? Is there filters to deal with?
Well, these are not. These are like tanks that are about as tall as you, maybe a little taller, that we have special kind of catalytic carbon inside. And then air oxidation or another type of oxidant that basically makes the contaminants in the water bind together, and then it's removable by carbon. Carbon is really cool, right? It's a single gram of carbon, like a teeny tiny bit of carbon, have so many holes and valleys and porous elements through it that if you were to lay out the surface area of a single gram of carbon, it would cover 3 tennis courts.
Wow.
So if you just oxidize metals or some other contaminants, so they bind together and they become big enough, carbon removes it very easily. But some people do require reverse osmosis water.
Okay.
Some people definitely have to have that, and if that's the case, we are definitely adding stuff back in after the fact.
Yes. And what is a case when they require reverse osmosis?
Well, like a lot of times, if the salt is so high or the various salts are so high that doing treatment would require like a treatment train of like 5 or 6 different systems and a ton of different medias.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a TDS over 500, for example, which TDS is total dissolved solids, which is basically every dissolved solid that is dissolved and therefore could combine, but that level is just so high, that becomes this situation where, wow, if we start doing media, we're going to be adding so much salt, we're going to be adding so much residual. The balancing act of the media becomes difficult. There are salts in this water that are going to really affect things. And that's going to create chlorides like crazy. Okay, we're at a point, unfortunately, where we have to do reverse osmosis.
Got it. Okay. And if you do RO or reverse osmosis, you are having to put stuff back in because you're truly cleaning out.
In most cases, some people want totally pure, as pure as they can get, in which case we leave it. But yes, in a lot of cases with the brewers and the people who do coffee, they want minerals put back in. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. That's great to know. That's great to know for any, brewer or coffee shop out there listening here. Just a good tip to think about that, because a lot of people think, oh, reverse osmosis, that's the end all be all. That's what I want. And it may not be the case. And you're probably saving yourself quite a bit of money, I'm assuming, over the tank filter system versus an RO system.
Yep.
All right. That's great to know. What is one thing someone could do right now to improve or prepare their water?
Oh, well, that is, I can't speak so broadly because I got to target everything I do. Any treatment I do, I got to be like, okay, what's the problem first? I got to test. I got to say, what exactly is the problem?
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to say, what is the purpose? And then the stuff in the middle, that's where we do our work. That's where we say, okay, if we got this starting water and we know where we want our water to end, now we know what to do in the middle. So if I were to say one thing, which this is not the advice I would ever give because you have to test and you have to know where you're going.
Okay.
But if you put a gun in my head and say you have to give me an answer, I would say carbon.
Carbon, okay.
Because carbon is so good at filtering so many things. It is, however, bad at reliably filtering so many things, except for chlorine.
Okay.
So carbon's funny. It makes water taste better. It is why Brita became this multi-million-dollar company.
Yeah.
It has the magic power of having so much surface area for binding contaminants, but it will let stuff through all day long. Unless it's chlorine and chloramines, which it's amazing at, it will one day you'll be like, oh, hey, this carbon got rid of my arsenic. And then the next day you're like, wait a second, why is there arsenic coming through now?
I see.
Yeah.
So the best thing you could really do to start off is just test your water.
That's right.
Okay.
Test
All
your
right.
water.
Drive that message home. Test your water first, find out where you need to go from there, and then
That's right.
identify the goal you want to have with your water.
That's right. And then stuff between is the magic.
Awesome. All right. So I got a couple more questions. This one is kind of a fun one. So we've been talking about water. We've been talking about beer. We've been talking about coffee. All the things water is required, high quality water is required to make a great beverage. So what is your favorite beverage?
Oh my gosh. What if I'm really boring and what if I say my favorite beverage is water?
I was waiting for that. I was wondering. I was like, oh, he's going to say water. So
I know it's awful.
No, in this case, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. What's your favorite beverage?
My favorite beverage, oh my goodness. In the morning, I like a good cup of coffee, an Ethiopian. And in the evening, oh boy, I like stouts. And if I want something sweet, I like the homemade root beers. So the sugarcane root beers.
Oh, wow. I would love that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm going to switch my answer to that one. You and my wife would get along. She's exactly that profile. She likes strong coffee and then pretty strong beer.
All right.
In the evening, so.
And that's great. No, it's always a fun story. I was just like, yeah, he's going to say water. It's got to be. My son is the same way. He has a favorite place he gets his water, and it's ironically from a coffee shop.
Oh, wow.
He can tell the difference. And the coffee shop owner is like, when's he working for me? So, maybe a few more years.
So does the coffee shop use RO water? That's the question.
They use an RO system, I believe, and they also backload in their minerals. So they have a mineral balance.
You know what you should do? You should get an RO at your house and say, I went ahead and I got the same water here.
Yeah.
Son. The exact same water. It's now at our sink.
Yeah, I've had him blind taste test it, and he's picked the coffee shop water.
Wow.
I'm impressed. Okay. So
that's impressive.
Yeah. So do you have, if anybody wants to know more information about the health and safety behind water, the EPA, what was it, the MLC,
and
MCLG, yeah, or anything along those lines, where would they find out information about that? Could they also, where can people find more information about you and Pure Water Northwest?
Absolutely. So for the EPA information, you literally can go to epa.gov and search for the National Primary Drinking Water Regulations. Mm-hmm. And it will give you a long list of the MCLG and the MCL for hundreds of different things. So there's that. And then for testing, local labs are great, but honestly, it is usually less money to use what's called syndicated laboratories, which is, if you search online for water testing, you will find these companies are advertising their services as a kit that they will mail to you. Then you take the water and you send the kit back through the mail. As strange as that sounds, even though you're doing it that way, that is a less expensive way usually to get full spectrum testing done. And when I say full spectrum testing, I want to make sure we're speaking the same language, because you can get full spectrum testing done at your local lab. But if you're not doing roughly 50 different contaminants that are covering metals and biologics, then you are not doing full spectrum testing. And a local lab will almost always charge like $1,000 versus these labs that do syndicated testing. They'll charge about $200.
Wow.
So it's a massive difference. And then once you get that testing done, reach out to us or whoever's local for you that does water treatment, and send us your report. You can actually send it to us. It's fine. If you go to purewaternorthwest.com, you will find a way to contact us. It doesn't matter where you are in the United States. If you send us your report, we can get you a treatment system that we can then send you in the mail, and you can have a local plumber install it if you want to work with us. And if you'd rather work with someone local, just make sure it's someone who understands how to read water quality reports and how to design systems based on that. And if you do that, you're going to be good to go.
All right. Well, that was a great tip and a great money-saving tip at that.
Yeah.
So, Cydian, this has been very informative, and I really like the idea of just understanding the quality parameters behind water, what you're pulling out, what systems to use, why, how you can save money on certain systems, the knowledge on carbon and why it's so effective. And then finally, just when you're coming in, to reach out to you once you've tested your water, so test that water first. What is your goal with your water? And that is just as important to inform water treatment experts than as anything else. So just like then, whatever your goal is with your business, same kind of what's your goal with your water.
Exactly.
All right. This has been a great talk. I really appreciate you coming on Harvest to Pour, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages with Matthew Shipp. Check the show notes for our guest contact information and connect with Matthew Shipp on LinkedIn today.